So next up is Maggie Morrisey. If you want to come and join me at the front, please, Maggie.
Okay, shall I?
Yeah, just go.
Okay, sorry, I'm not used to the microphone, so I'm not sure if you could all hear me correctly. Quick word, I'm Maggie Morrisey. I'm on Twitter as Technology to Tea. Some of you may follow me or whatever. If not, don't worry about it. Actually, I still teach, although I do my own teacher training and stuff as well. I actually specialise I'm a primary teacher, and I specialise in actual science and technology, which apparently I suppose is quite rare, but I don't know. But interestingly enough, this session is about using robots in the literacy lesson, because as you know, as a primary teacher, you teach more than one specialised subject. And robots. Now, you may have come across some of these. You may have even found this classic robot in a cupboard in a box somewhere and wondered what it was. Or you may have the more interesting or the newer model that they have now. I started to use these, or the classic robot, many years ago when I was an ICT coordinator, because we had them in our school, but they weren't being utilised enough. And that's when I saw their potential for being used in literacy. Why I started using them with children, the whole class. I used one Roma, and there was a big classroom, and I used them to do instruction writing. The reason I did this was we had a variety of children with abilities, and I didn't feel it was fair sometimes to exclude some of the children to do sort of downgraded things. I wanted them to be down and go upwards. And a lot of the children very quickly, because some of them had English as a second language, or they had they were struggling with English, could participate because they could rely on symbols and, sort of shortened words and things like that to take part. Obviously, the more able then could develop their sentence structures. The thing about, as you probably know, is instruction writing, children often miss bits out. They, that cup of tea, they turn around, they miss a bit out. They haven't quite followed the instruction. With the Roma, they get immediate feedback, and they very quickly would know that they've made an error. And it was amazing the sort of impact it had on them. I then had the opportunity to take the new Roma with me to Russia. I've been teaching in Moscow for 2.5 years. And as I say, there's a sort of why I use them. They're easy to use, it's fairly often. I'll talk a bit more about this because I'm not sure how the time is running here. So, so anyway, I took one with me to Moscow, and if we can, yeah. Okay, so it was quite interesting. I ended up with a group of about 8 to 10 children who had mixed abilities in English. None of them were Russian children. They actually had a variety of different language from Estonia, Turkey, and Oman, and various places. They were supposed to be teaching ESL lessons from a book, and I don't care what anyone says. I'm not teaching from a book, not another language, because not to such young children anyway. As I was the most experienced teacher, I had the largest group, and these children, there were some issues about learning this English, obviously in Moscow, because in Moscow not many people actually speak English outside of the school. And what you sometimes have is a motivational problem. Some of the children, a bit like I was when I was doing French years ago, well, I'm never going to go there, or I might not speak it until whenever, and are not as switched on. So I wanted to use something that would engage them, and the Roma did. So there was obviously a process and steps to this. And, okay. So the process. We started off, I think the most important part of doing this with children is obviously introducing them to the Roma. I actually did with them a pass the parcel. It gave me lots of chance to talk and speak, predict what was inside the package, what do they think it was. Actually, the little girl in the picture, only one of the girls in the picture was actually saying, it's a robot. For some reason, she completely knew that it was a robot. Then we went on to do several sessions where the children played and got used to how they worked, talked, directional language and various things like this. They reprogrammed, programmed. We didn't get too much into computing and coding. Because it was literacy. So I didn't want them, they didn't have to do procedures or anything like that. and there was a lot of interaction and developing of English skills during that session. We then went on, and after this, I introduced them to instruction writing, very much like you would do a literacy sessions, several sessions over here in the UK. I obviously put in EAL support, visual pictures, steps, and having the Roma there also reinforced what they were writing about. The children would draw up the movements they wanted to make and put in the steps, practice them out, then use the Romas to do them. And eventually then, they made little brochures, and this was just an example of Ishraq. She actually they did this work in about the February, March. She was actually new to Moscow from Amman in the September and spoke no English whatsoever. And she was a Year 5 student. And she just really just loved this chance. So the work went over several weeks, 3 sessions a week, 45, because in Europe they teach differently, 45-minute sessions as opposed to some of the things they redo. And you would have thought by the end of this that they might have got a bit bored by it, wouldn't you? You know, fed up with this Roma wobbling around the floor or whatever. They didn't. We then went on to the next bit. I started to talk to them about report writing. And we then moved up a notch with their writing. And the children went on to learn about reports and explanations. So they then started to write about what a Roma was. There was lots of editing and re-editing. I had to teach them about diagrams, what diagrams were, what the importance of that. So there was lots of, normal teaching going on as well as the machine running around the floor and whatever. They were highly motivated, and I was really impressed that I think they must have heard their other friends were still doing the books, because they were quite happy to carry on and do the work. And the collaboration was good. Admittedly, it was a small group, but I still believe with one robot you can still do this with a bigger class, because they can, how you manage that, of course. And that was it, really. They went on and did some fabulous work, and it just showed me just how their language developed over that period of time. Not just their written, but their spoken language. And there are some further details on the blog, and also the project. I've actually written about the project in ICT in Practice, which is a digital magazine. I don't know if any of you have it. It gives you lots of teaching ideas and things that people have done in the classroom or research-based. So there is an article there for you. And is that it? Have I gone under or over? Is that?
It was 7 minutes past, so you're bang on time.
Thanks. I didn't practice too much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maggie. Thank you.